Hello, friends, and let's get started.
I leaned forward, a caustic sneer in my voice. It didn't mean anything. Do you even hear yourself? It meant enough to make you pull up your skirt on the street in front of your boss. Melissa faltered, not expecting me to say it so bluntly. He's the one who... He started at first. She stammered, trying to justify herself. I don't care, Melissa, I interrupted. I've seen enough to know what's what, and I'm not going to listen to your excuses. It's over. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time I didn't let myself be fooled. I'd seen crocodile tears like that before, but they wouldn't work on me again. I saw the panic sweep over her. She realized I wasn't bluffing. This was something that couldn't be made up for with sweet talk and empty promises. Brian, please. Her voice was shaking. She was ready for anything. We can go to therapy. Quit my job if you want me to, but don't do it. You should have thought about that before you let him touch you, I said, getting up. Pack your things. You shouldn't be here tomorrow. But before we get to that story, write in the comments if you're interested in stories like this about retribution and justice. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new exciting stories. 22 years of marriage. It would seem a strong, time-tested union that has gone through its ups and downs. Yes, of course, it wasn't without its disagreements. Show me a family that doesn't have them after so many years together. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened. I would call my relationship with Melissa stable, though far from ideal. In the morning, we'd go about our business. I'd go to work, she'd go to hers. In the evening, we would come home, have dinner, and then sit in front of the TV, spending time in silent agreement. I can't say that there was passion between us, but this life seemed quite normal to me. At least I thought it suited us both. But lately, something had changed about Melissa. She was staying late at work more and more often, and when she came home, she smelled of perfume that I certainly hadn't given her. My questions were met with the standard excuses. She was working overtime, helping a new intern, or participating in some important project. Her words sounded unconvincing, and I had an uneasy feeling inside. And then the weirdness with the phone started. She wouldn't let it out of her hands, as if it were the source of some great secret. And at the slightest glimpse of me, the screen would go blank and the device would disappear into her pocket or bag. The Melissa I knew seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cold, aloof woman who looked at me with a blank stare and barely showed any emotion. My inner voice told me that something serious was going on, but even my darkest guesses couldn't prepare me for learning the truth. The denouement came at her company party. It was one of those boring office events that no one likes, but everyone pretends to have fun. Melissa insisted that I go with her this time. In retrospect, that should have been a wake-up call for me, but at the time I just thought that maybe she wanted to lighten the atmosphere between us, to regain something we'd lost recently. At first glance, everything seemed quite normal. Melissa introduced me to her co-workers, including her boss, Derek. Typical corporate smug type. Too loud, too confident, soaked in the pungent odor of expensive cologne and convinced of his own irresistibility. I didn't like him right away, but Melissa had said many times that he was a great leader. Well, another pompous guy in a suit. Not the first, not the last. However, the longer the evening went on, the more my anxiety grew. I caught moments when Melissa and Derek stood off to the side, whispering, laughing a little louder than the situation warranted, and their gazes lingering on each other a little longer than was decent. When I gently inquired as to what was going on between them, Melissa only waved it off with a light chuckle, saying, "Derek's just really funny," and I was getting myself worked up for nothing. After a couple drinks and a lot of strained conversations with people I didn't know, I decided to go out for some fresh air. I walked around the building, enjoying the quiet and cool of the night, and suddenly I saw something that turned my whole life upside down. There, in the shadow of the building, stood she, my wife. Melissa, the woman I'd lived with for 22 years. Her skirt was up, her hands clinging to Derek like her life depended on it. He was pressing her against the wall, one hand resting confidently on her hip, the other. Well, let's just say nothing like this should definitely be happening at an office party. Time stopped. The world around me collapsed in an instant. In front of me stood a woman whom I trusted unconditionally, who was in the most humiliating and unacceptable situation with her own boss. For a moment I froze, Not knowing what would happen next, I would vomit in disgust or lash out at him with my fists. Something inside me snapped. Before I realized my actions, I rushed toward them. Melissa had her back to me and didn't see me coming, but Derek spotted me instantly. His eyes went wide in the same, "oh, shit" expression so familiar to the perpetrators of crime scenes. Before he could even react, I had already ripped him off her, my fist flying right into his smug face. Derek fell to the ground like a sack of rocks. I don't think he even had time to pull up his pants before he hit the asphalt. Melissa shrieked, recoiled, and, hands trembling, began to hurriedly clean herself up. "What the hell are you doing, Brian?" Her voice was ringing hysterical, like it was my fault. Unbelievable. I stood there, heart thudding in my chest, trying to realize what I was seeing. She took a step toward me, as if nothing had happened. "It's not what you think," she whispered. I laughed. Really? The classic excuse? Even now, with her skirt still half up and Derek squirming on the ground, she dares to say that? Not what I think. I gritted my teeth. "Melissa, I just caught you in the parking lot, pressed up against the wall with your boss. Skirt pulled up, lips sticking together. What else could it be?" She started making some sort of inarticulate stream of excuses, like a kid caught stealing candy. "It's just, it doesn't mean anything. He was drunk. I tried to push him away," she wailed. "It was a mistake, I swear." I couldn't believe it. How could she lie to my face so blatantly? Did she really think I was that naive? The more she talked, the more anger flared up in me. "You think I'm an idiot?" I shouted. "How long has this been going on?" Her face flashed, and she instantly switched from pleading to defense. "It was a one-time thing. I didn't want this. He's my boss, and this is just a mistake." A mistake? I grinned, like forgetting an anniversary or accidentally filling the wrong car with gasoline. "Of course, Melissa. Mistakes happen all the time." I didn't believe a word she said. I had two choices: stay and let her keep screwing around, or leave before I did something I would regret. I turned around and walked to the car, leaving her standing there next to Derek, who was still squirming on the ground. The drive back was like a dream. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly I thought I might rip it out by the roots. My thoughts were a whirlwind: anger, shock, resentment. But strongest of all was the feeling of emptiness. Yes, I was angry, but even more intense was the sense of loss. 22 years of my life had just been shattered in one night. I parked in front of my house and sat in my car, unable to get out. How long had this been going on? Did she even love me? In an instant, all the memories, the wedding, the traveling, the Sunday morning breakfast, turned into a farce, as if she'd spent her whole life just acting out a play in front of me. All the memories of our life together, the wedding, the traveling, the lazy Sunday mornings, now seemed fake, part of the carefully planned play she'd been acting out in front of me. I finally forced myself into the house, but everything there felt foreign. I couldn't even look at the pictures of us together on the mantelpiece. It's amazing how quickly love can turn to disgust. I poured myself a drink, then another, but even alcohol couldn't dull the pain that was tearing me apart inside. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like a complete idiot. How could I not have noticed? Had she been laughing behind my back the whole time? I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every time I closed my eyelids, a picture came back to me. Melissa and Derek, her pathetic excuses echoing in my head. And then came an even worse thought. What if this wasn't the first time? If Derek wasn't the only one? My mind began to crumble under the weight of suspicion. All her late nights at work, all the time she'd push me away under the pretense of fatigue, suddenly added up into one picture leading up to this moment. By morning, my anger had cooled, turning into something cold, definitive. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was ready to call it a day. I wasn't going to listen to her false excuses and pleading words. I knew I deserved better than that. Yes, anyone deserved better than that. At noon, I called Melissa just to see if she'd dare try to twist my arm. Of course, she didn't answer. But a few hours later, a text came in, as if words alone could undo what she'd done. "Brian, we need to talk. I'm sorry about last night. Let's just sit down and talk things through. It was a terrible mistake, but I love you. Please don't do anything rash." Hasty? I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. If that was her understanding of love, I didn't need to be a part of it. I didn't answer. What was there to say? Did she want to discuss it like it was just a petty squabble that could be settled over a cup of coffee? No, it was no longer something that could be hushed up and forgotten. Instead, I took action. First thing Monday morning, I contacted a lawyer. I didn't want to give her time to get out of it or play the "it was just a mistake" card again. My attorney, Steve, was straightforward but understood the situation. "It happens more often than you think," he said, as if those words could comfort me. He laid out the divorce plan in front of me. Property division, no children, no disputed issues, but given our marriage of many years, possible alimony. Nothing was final yet, though. Part of me wanted to kick her out right that very day, but Steve advised me to take my time. He said it was better to give her time to pack her things and leave on her own. That way it would be easier and less complicated. It's better if it goes smoothly. Smoothly? In a disaster like this, that seemed impossible. That night, Melissa returned home as if nothing had happened. She walked in with a strained smile, filled with anxious energy, scrutinizing my expression, trying to figure out how angry I was. "Hi," she said softly, like she was the innocent victim here. I stared at her in silence. She knew I understood. The atmosphere in the room was so tense that it felt like you could suffocate. "Are we going to talk?" she finally asked, trying to keep her voice steady, but I could hear it treacherously shaking. Good, I thought. Let her feel uncomfortable. Let her suffer. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly. "I've already contacted a lawyer. It's over." Her face changed instantly, from contrition to irritated defense. "Wait, Brian, are you serious? Are you really willing to throw 22 years away over one stupid mistake?" It meant nothing. There it was. I leaned forward, a caustic sneer in my voice. "It meant nothing? Do you even hear yourself?" "It meant enough to make you pull up your skirt in the parking lot in front of your boss." Melissa faltered, not expecting me to say it so bluntly. "It's not what you think," she stammered, trying to justify herself. "It was him. He started it first. I don't care," I interrupted. "I really don't, Melissa. I've seen enough to know what's what, and I'm not going to listen to your excuses. It's over." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time I didn't let myself be fooled. I'd seen crocodile tears like that before, but they wouldn't work on me again. "You don't mean it," she whispered. "I know you. You're just angry, but we can get through this." "No," I said firmly. "We can't. And we won't." I saw the panic sweep over her. She realized I wasn't bluffing. This was something that couldn't be made up for with sweet talk and empty promises. "Brian, please." Her voice was shaking. She was ready for anything. "We can go to therapy. Quit my job if you want me to, but don't do it." "You should have thought about that before you let him touch you," I said, getting up. "Pack your things. You're not supposed to be here tomorrow." Her jaw twitched, and pleading was followed by anger. "Are you really going to kick me out? After everything we've had?" I looked at her coldly. "Yes, Melissa. You should still be grateful that I'm giving you the chance to leave with dignity." She was furious, but I didn't care. I turned around and went upstairs, leaving her to digest her own mistakes. For me, this was final. I wasn't going to let her shackle me to the remnants of this farce called marriage. The next morning, I was awakened by the slamming of drawers and muffled sobs from downstairs. Melissa was packing. Great. I wasn't going to help her, nor was I going to feel remorse. I'd already shown her more mercy than she deserved. I stood in the hallway, listening to her footsteps, feeling oddly relieved. The weight on my soul wasn't completely gone, but at least I could breathe again. As I walked downstairs, I saw her loading the last suitcase into the car. Her eyes were red and swollen from the tears she seemed to have been shedding all night. She froze at the door, as if trying to find the right words, but I wasn't in the mood for another speech. Too much had already been said. "Brian," she started in a whisper. I didn't let her finish. "Don't," I interrupted. "Just go." She froze, biting her lip, as if hoping I'd change my mind. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Taking a shaky breath, she nodded and walked out the door without another word. I watched her drive away, and a strange sense of calm spilled inside me. It wasn't happiness, but maybe it was something close to it. Maybe it was freedom. I didn't know for sure, but I knew one thing. I was finally free of the lies, the cheating, and the constant agonizing doubts. Melissa was out of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could move on. The divorce was finalized a few months later, and everything went just as Steve had predicted. She didn't contest anything, probably realizing I had too much evidence. We divided the property equally, and that was the end of it. No more Melissa, no more betrayals, no more lies. Just me, and trying to figure out what my life would be like now after 22 years of marriage. Now, looking back, I see the signs I ignored at the time. Of course, in hindsight, everything is obvious. But one thing I can say for sure is that if you feel like something is wrong in a relationship, trust your feelings. Intuition is rarely wrong. Don't let anyone suggest to you that you're crazy if you ask questions or want to know the truth. If a person has nothing to hide, they won't act like they do. And if any of you have been through something like this, believe me, I understand how it feels. It's a low blow. It feels like the world is crumbling around you. But I swear, you'll get out of it. It will hurt. You will have to spend sleepless nights in doubt. But one day you will find yourself again. Just never settle for being someone's backup. As for me, I'm doing fine. Living day by day, rediscovering forgotten hobbies, learning to enjoy life. I'm in no hurry to jump into a new relationship. But who knows? Maybe one day, I'll meet someone who will truly appreciate what we build. In the meantime, I'm focusing on me, and honestly, it feels pretty damn good. That's my story. If you take one thing out of it, let it be this. Don't let anyone make you feel unworthy. You deserve more than a lie. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is just walk away. But if you do, trust me, it will be worth it. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.